Jayden Daniels is fulfilling the long-awaited expectations set in his freshman year at Arizona State. But how did a quarterback that had 11 combined starts without a touchdown pass in 21 and 22 become a dual-threat Heisman contender with 50 combined touchdowns? Let's talk about it. I got a feel-good story for you. What else do you want the man to do? We're counting down the best plays. How do you define success?
George Wrighster.
Let's go back. The year is 2019. A skinny freshman named Jayden Daniels from Cajon High School in Santa Barbara, California, is garnering national hype at Arizona State University. Daniels has the Sun Devils 5-1, 2 gritty road performances against Michigan State and Cal, and an electric game-winning TD run against Washington State. And next up on the schedule for ASU is Utah, the school that had put the most time and energy into recruiting Daniels before his unexpected flip on signing day. When Daniels broadcast his commitment to ASU live on Twitter, many of the comments told Jayden that he should have picked Utah. And he even read one of them out loud, and he laughed.
Hey, somebody said shit if you
They said what?
Look down.
They said shut up and what?
Throw it up, though. Hey, force up, baby.
That game was going to be personal for the Utes, and they had 3 NFL-ready defensive linemen, and the game was in Salt Lake City. The Sun Devils were starting a 17-year-old at tackle, so that wasn't good. And it was the day that we learned 2 things about Jayden Daniels. First, we learned that the kid wasn't perfect. He had as bad of a full game as anybody in college football history, 4 for 18, 25 yards, and a pick. And the other thing that we learned is that he gets back up again and again and again. And after getting killed by Utah, Jayden Daniels went back to work. He had 10 total touchdowns in his next 3 games without a turnover. He even knocked Oregon out of the college football playoff contention and outplayed Justin Herbert. But we won't even get into the Prentice Guild conspiracy theories because that's not what we're here for. But to end his freshman season, he beat Arizona in the Territorial Cup and was named the Sun Bowl MVP after a win over Florida State. His freshman season concluded 17 touchdowns, 2 picks, and almost 3,000 yards passing. Now, the hype train was rolling, and to people like myself that cover college football, he was going to be next up. And nothing about the COVID-shortened 2020 season said otherwise. And then going into 2021, Jayden Daniels had all the weapons any quarterback could ever want. That ASU team was absolutely loaded. Rachaad White, now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brian Thompson, who's now with the Buffalo Bills. You had Curtis Hodges, who's now with the Washington Commanders. Ricky Pearsall, who's balling down there as Florida's leading wide receiver. Johnny Wilson doing really good things over at Florida State at wideout. Chip Trainum, running back over at Ohio State. And not to mention Elijah Badger and Jaden Connors, 2 of ASU's best players to this day. They were both on that 2021 team, and the expectations were through the roof. But just before the season started, news broke that ASU was being investigated for a litany of recruiting violations. And Jayden Daniels' own mother was implicated, and several of the team's offensive coaches were placed on leave. And then ASU that season would ultimately go 8-5 in what looked like a 12-win roster. Now, normally, short-handed Jayden Daniels threw just 10 touchdowns and equaled that with 10 interceptions. And he started to flash the serious skill as a runner, but was constantly criticized for taking off without reading the field. And when he'd make mistakes, he'd sit there and smile. And instead of taking Daniels' demeanor as him being the same unflappable player that he was as a freshman, Sun Devils fans then took it as him being unserious. His accuracy faltered. His risk aversion used to be at least protecting the football. But in 2021, he had more games where he threw an interception in 7, where he gagged games where he threw a touchdown in 6. And people wondered if Daniels would even stay at Arizona State. Now, it was reported that his relationship with offensive coordinator Zach Hill was on the rocks, and it was reported that his mother had too much access within the program. But to the surprise of many, Jayden Daniels announced in a highly produced video standing next to Herm Edwards that he was returning to ASU. And 2 months later, right as the 2022 spring practice was set to begin, Daniels changed his mind and hopped into the transfer portal. Now, the reaction from fans was brutal, but it was the reaction of a couple of his teammates that made national headlines.
Clean that nigga shit out. He out of this bitch. Nigga suck anyways.
Daniels would ultimately choose LSU with newly hired Brian Kelly from Notre Dame as the head coach. Now, the decision surprised a lot of people, well, because Brian Kelly is a yeller. And at Arizona State, it seemed like Jayden Daniels was coddled by Herm Edwards and protected by Antonio Pierce. He was rarely, if ever, criticized. For a guy that's always been able to take a physical hit, it was like the ASU coaches were afraid that he couldn't take a hit to his ego. But Brian Kelly wasn't worried about that. One thing that Brian Kelly's gonna do is he's gonna show you that forehead vein when you make a mistake. And in Jayden Daniels' first year at LSU, he made plenty of mistakes. The Tigers' wins over Auburn and Arkansas last year were in spite of Jayden Daniels and not because of him. Both Tennessee and Georgia beat LSU by taking away Daniels' ability to run. Then you had star wide receiver Cajon. He spent all year looking pissed off that Daniels wouldn't target him downfield. And in fact, Daniels went back to the same cautious passing strategy that helped him emerge as a formidable freshman 3 years earlier. And it led to 3 times as many passing games under 200 yards in 6 as he had passing games for over 300 yards, which was just 2. So what changed this year? Well, for starters, he trusts his accuracy and his wide receivers enough to let the ball go. His star, Malik Neighbors, went from 3 touchdowns on 72 catches in 22 to 14 touchdown catches on 86 receptions this year. Great quarterbacks throw into single coverage and let their wideouts go up and get it. And Jayden Daniels does that now.
Very, very good. Jayden Daniels looking for the end zone. Touchdown!
But what about his running? Well, it's no longer one read, panic, and go, and it hasn't been that for the last 2 years. Jayden Daniels is tearing up college football with a mix of design runs as well as calculated scrambles and unmatched acceleration. Now, just look at this run against Florida.
Florida drops into a zone. Daniels trying to run it. Got some space. What a move! Jayden Daniels again! Jayden Daniels, touchdown LSU! 51 yards!
He doesn't even use his blockers here. It's like he knows what the defenders are going to do before they even do it. And he finally has become the touchdown-slinging, electric running version of himself that we saw at Cajon High School. And the stats aren't that dissimilar. Over 70% completions, over 10 touchdowns for every interception thrown, over 1,000 yards rushing at over 8 yards a carry. And these are things that Jayden Daniels did in his final year of high school, and they're things he's doing now. And you have to wonder if this would have been possible at Arizona State, because the talent was there, but the one thing was missing was accountability. Now, not every athlete wants to be coached hard, but the great ones do. And it's one of Brian Kelly's biggest accomplishments in a career full of big accomplishments that he recognized in Jayden Daniels what Herm Edwards could not. That the same resolve that Jayden Daniels has to get up after a big hit also translates to his ability to take criticism. Let that sink in.